Did you know that D-Day, one of the most famous operations in military history, wasn't just about soldiers storming beaches? Option 2. Imagine planning the largest military invasion in history, knowing that if you fail, the world might remain under Nazi control. The stakes were high for the Allied leaders who masterminded D-Day. Option 3. When we think of D-Day, we often picture soldiers storming the beaches of Normandy. But have you ever wondered who made that possible? D-Day wasn't just another day in World War II. It was the day that changed everything. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched the largest amphibious invasion in history, storming the beaches of Normandy to liberate Nazi-occupied Europe. But what made this operation remarkable wasn't just its scale, it was the planning behind it. Months of preparation, countless sleepless nights, and a team of brilliant strategists brought this daring plan to life. It was about outsmarting an enemy who seemed almost invincible. Leaders like General Eisenhower and Montgomery worked together, managing everything from timing the tides to faking entire armies. It was a high-stakes gamble where the smallest mistake could mean disaster. Let's uncover how these masterminds turned an impossible mission into a pivotal victory that shaped the future of the world. Chapter 1. Presentation of the challenge planning. D-Day wasn't just about saying, "Let's invade France." Oh no, it was like solving the most complicated puzzle you can imagine, except the stakes were the future of the world. For starters, the Allies couldn't just march up and knock on Hitler's door. They had to trick him into looking the other way. That's where Operation Bodyguard came in. They used fake tanks, phony radio chatter, and even dropped a dead body with fake plans to convince the Germans the invasion would happen somewhere else. Can you imagine the nerves it took to pull that off? And then there was the sheer scale of the operation. 156,000 soldiers, 5,000 ships, thousands of planes and tanks all needing to hit the beaches at just the right time. Food, ammunition, medical supplies, it all had to be ready, and not a single thing could go wrong. Keeping that many people organized, and more importantly, keeping it all a secret. That was a miracle in itself. Then, wouldn't you know it, the weather decided to throw a wrench into everything. Storms on June 5th made crossing the channel impossible. The leaders had to gamble and push the invasion to the next day, praying for a break in the clouds. And let's not forget, this wasn't just one army. You had Americans, Brits, Canadians, forces from all over, all with their own ideas and ways of doing things. Getting everyone to work together? That took some serious leadership. Looking back, it's amazing it even happened. But these challenges were just the beginning. The real magic came from the people who figured out how to make it work. Chapter 2. The Masterminds. Now, let me tell you about the people who made D-Day happen. Leaders with nerves of steel. At the top, you had General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the man in charge of the entire Allied operation. Now, Eisenhower wasn't flashy, but boy did he know how to lead. He was the glue that held everyone together. It was his job to keep the British, Americans, Canadians, and everyone else on the same page. Imagine the pressure of that. And here's the thing about Ike. He wasn't just giving orders. He wrote a note before the invasion, taking full responsibility if it failed. Talk about guts. Then there was General Bernard Montgomery, or Monty, as they called him. He was in charge of the ground forces, making sure the soldiers had a clear plan once they hit the beaches. Monty was meticulous, the kind of guy who didn't leave anything to chance. He had a knack for strategy and a fiery personality that sometimes rubbed people the wrong way. But hey, you don't get results by being everyone's best friend, right? And let's not forget the men who handled the sea and sky. Admiral Bertram Ramsay was the genius behind the naval side of things. Imagine coordinating thousands of ships to cross the English Channel, dodging mines and enemy fire, all while landing troops exactly where they needed to be. Ramsay made it happen with precision. Then, up in the clouds, Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder was working his magic. His job? Clear the skies of German planes and bomb the enemy defenses. Tedder's efforts made sure the soldiers had a fighting chance when they landed, But here's the thing. D-Day wasn't just about brute force. It was also about fooling the enemy, and that's where Colonel Andrew Thorne and his team came in. These guys masterminded the greatest trick in military history, Operation Fortitude. They made the Germans think the invasion was coming at Pas de Calais, not Normandy. Fake armies, rubber tanks, double agents. It sounds like something out of a spy novel, doesn't it? And it worked. Hitler kept his troops in the wrong place, giving the Allies the opening they needed. Of course, none of this was smooth sailing. These leaders had their disagreements. Eisenhower had to referee arguments between Monty and the Americans more than once. But when the time came, they worked together. They knew the stakes were too high for egos to get in the way. So, picture this. A storm is raging on June 5th, 1944. The invasion is delayed, and everyone's on edge. Eisenhower calls a meeting with his top commanders. After hearing the weather forecast, he makes the call. We go tomorrow. Can you imagine being in that room? Everything, years of planning, the hopes of millions, came down to that moment. These masterminds didn't just plan an invasion, they changed the course of history. And as the sun rose on June 6th, the pieces of their grand plan started falling into place. But the real test was yet to come, when soldiers landed on those beaches and faced the brutal reality of war. Chapter 3. Climax. June 6th, 1944. June 6th, 1944, the day it all went down. The early hours of the morning, the sky still dark, and tens of thousands of soldiers preparing to storm the beaches. The operation started with paratroopers, brave men who jumped out of planes behind enemy lines to secure key bridges and roads. They had to make sure the Germans couldn't send reinforcements to the beaches. Sounds simple enough, right? It wasn't. Many missed their drop zones and ended up scattered, but somehow, they still managed to wreak havoc on German defenses. As the sun started to rise, an armada of ships appeared on the horizon. Thousands of them. The sheer size of it must have been terrifying to anyone watching from the shore. The naval bombardment began, pounding German defenses with everything they had. Then came the landing craft, packed with soldiers who were about to face hell. On beaches like Omaha and Utah, the fighting was brutal. The Germans had fortified positions, machine guns blazing. But despite the chaos, the soldiers pushed forward. It wasn't just bravery, it was the result of months of planning and leadership. Every moment tested the mastermind's strategies, and every inch gained brought the Allies closer to victory. Chapter 4. Why it ended. By the end of June 6th, the Allies had done what seemed impossible. They'd secured a foothold in Normandy. Thousands of lives were lost, and the beaches were littered with the scars of war. But the plan worked. Hitler had been fooled by the deception campaigns, and the German forces were caught off guard. This wasn't just about one day. D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Within weeks, Allied forces poured into France, pushing the enemy back step by step. The invasion not only ended a battle, it opened the door to liberate Europe. Chapter 5. Final Thoughts. D-Day was the turning point. It showed the power of leadership, planning, and sheer determination. Leaders like Eisenhower, Montgomery, Ramsey, and Tedder created a vision and brought it to life under extraordinary pressure. Their collaboration, despite disagreements, proved that even the toughest obstacles could be overcome with teamwork and strategy. But let's not forget the soldiers, ordinary men who became heroes on those beaches. Their courage brought the mastermind's plans to life and turned the tide of history. D-Day wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about taking the first step toward freedom for millions of people. As we look back, it's hard not to marvel at the brilliance and bravery it took to pull off such a feat. It's a story that reminds us what's possible when humanity rises to meet its greatest challenges.